Fanon's A Dying Colonialism is about the Algerian struggle for independence from French colonial rule. The book was published in 1959 during the height of the Algerian War, which took place between 1954 to 1962. This book shares Fanon's observations and insights about how colonialism not only destroys nations politically and economically, but also damages people's minds, identities, families, and traditions. Fanon shows that during the fight for freedom, deep changes begin to take place in society. People begin to reclaim their dignity, transform their culture, and challenge the colonial order in unexpected ways. Fanon starts the book by explaining that colonialism is not only about taking land or controlling resources, it is about shaping people's minds. The colonizer presents their own culture as modern and advanced, while the colonized people are described as backward, ignorant, and in need of saving. In Algeria, the French colonial system tried to change every part of people's lives, their language, religion, homes, customs, and even their sense of self. This kind of control was very violent, even when it was hidden behind talk of civilization or progress. Fanon shows that the Algerians were not just fighting for independence, they were fighting for their humanity. In the first chapter, Fanon discusses how family life and gender roles began to change during the war. In traditional Algerian society, women were often confined to the home and seen mostly as mothers and wives. But during the revolution, women began to take part in public and political life. They carried messages, planted bombs, and supported fighters. This shift challenged old customs and forced both men and women to rethink their roles. Fanon does not romanticize these changes. He shows that they were difficult, sometimes painful, but also necessary. Through their involvement in the resistance, women gained new confidence and visibility. They were no longer just protectors of culture, they became creators of a new future. Fanon examines the role of the veil, a traditional garment worn by many Algerian Muslim women. The French colonizers believed that unveiling Algerian women would help liberate them and bring them closer to French values. They tried to use the veil as a symbol of oppression and made public campaigns to remove it. But Algerian women used the veil in complex ways. During the revolution, some women took off the veil to blend in and carry weapons through checkpoints. Others kept wearing it as a form of resistance and cultural pride. The veil became a political tool, not just a religious or cultural object. What mattered was not whether the woman wore it or not, but how she chose to use it. In this way, colonial power failed to understand the meaning of Algerian identity. Fanon also writes about how the war changed people's views about modern technology. The radio is another example. Before the revolution, many Algerians distrusted the radio. It was seen as a French device that brought propaganda and lies into their homes. But as the revolution grew, Algerians began to use the radio to hear news from the liberation movement. They listened secretly to broadcasts from Cairo and other places that supported the Algerian cause. What was once feared and rejected became a weapon of resistance. This shows how people can take tools from the colonizers and give them new liberating meanings. Fanon's point is that technology is not neutral. It depends on who controls it and how people choose to use it. Fanon also focuses on medicine and health. Fanon was a trained psychiatrist and had first-hand experience with how colonial medicine worked. French doctors often treated Algerians as second-class patients. Hospitals were segregated, care was unequal. Sometimes Algerians were used in medical experiments or treated with disrespect. Because of this, many Algerians did not trust Western medicine. They turned to traditional healers and home remedies. But during the war, attitudes began to shift. The local revolutionaries set up medical teams to treat wounded fighters and villagers. They combined traditional methods with modern medicine. This showed people that science did not have to belong only to the colonizers. Fanon explains that trust in medicine was restored not through science alone, but through justice and respect. Healthcare became part of the liberation struggle. Fanon also explores how personal relationships and social habits changed. He writes about the deep suspicion and fear created by colonial rule. In a society under surveillance, people could no longer trust their neighbors. The French army used torture, arrests, and informants to divide communities. Families were torn apart, but Fanon also shows that through shared struggle, people began to rebuild trust and unity. The war created new bonds. Algerians began to see themselves not only as individuals but as part of a larger collective. Political awareness grew. The revolution taught people to think beyond their own needs and to work together for a common goal. One of the main ideas in the book is that revolution is not just about removing foreign rulers, it is about deep inner change. The process of resistance through which people began to free themselves from fear, shame, and internalized racism. They stopped seeing themselves through the eyes of the colonizer. They begin to walk taller, speak louder, and imagine new ways of living. This kind of change cannot be forced from outside, it grows through struggle, sacrifice, and courage. Fanon is clear that violence plays a major role in this transformation. He does not celebrate violence, but he understands it as a response to the violence of colonialism. When people have been beaten, silenced, and dehumanized for generations, resistance becomes necessary. For many colonized people, violence becomes a way to reclaim their voice and sense of power. It breaks the lie that the colonizer is unbeatable. Through struggle, the colonized learn that they are not helpless, they are capable of shaping history. By the end of the book, Fanon is hopeful. He sees signs that colonialism is not only weakening, it is dying. Its tools of control are losing their grip. The Algerian people, once divided and dominated, are now becoming stronger, more united, and more aware. Fanon believes that this kind of transformation can inspire other colonized nations. He warns, however, that the new society must not copy the old colonial system. True liberation means building a society based on justice, equality, and mutual respect, not just changing who holds power.